So I've already kind of talked about this on the channel before, but it's very well known now that Matt Rowell's interest in the AFL is at an all-time high. Again, it's a really weird situation with Matt Rowell and Gold Coast right now, because I think for the first time ever in the Gold Coast Suns Football Club's history, they don't need to try and overpay to keep a player like Matt Rowell. Of course, Matt Rowell is going out of contract. He can, of course, decide to leave for the Gold Coast Suns. Again, it will be through a trade, as we, of course, do know. But at the end of the day, we know Gold Coast have typically really tried to overpay to keep some of their stars. But where they're at right now, and a team that I think for the first time in their club's history can compete for the top 8, I genuinely believe with the talent coming through, a projected top 3 pick in Zeke Uland as an academy player in the 2025 draft as a midfielder, the Gold Coast Suns don't need to overpay for a guy like Matt Rowell anymore. And this has led Rowell to really go and interview with a lot of teams. Again, I feel like AFL is one of the only sports in the world where you can be a player and just go randomly meet with teams throughout the off season. Again, in most sports, that would be considered tampering, and you can only go and meet with teams during a free agency period. And if it's revealed that you did meet with a team before that, the team usually gets a massive fine and maybe some draft penalty. For example, I think a couple years ago when the Miami Heat signed Kyle Lowry in the NBA, they got a massive fine and were forced to give up multiple second-round picks. So, yeah, it is a weird situation, but Matt Rowell has been meeting with a bunch of teams. Again, on the channel, I've talked about him, of course, meeting with Geelong, but we've recently got a new confirmation that says that Collingwood and Essendon have both met with Matt Rowell in October last year per The Age. Again, there's been rumours as well that they, of course, have met another time or two since then. Of course, he's met with Geelong since then. It's being said that add these two clubs to Geelong as Victorian clubs set to have a crack at luring Rowell back home. Again, we have also heard from other leaks and other news around the AFL as well that apparently Richmond are very interested in Matt Rowell. Again, they haven't actually met with Matt Rowell, unlike these other 3 teams. We know the Gold Coast Suns are, of course, another team who is very interested in Matt Rowell. Again, I'm assuming they're currently calculating right now how much they want to offer him, what's the reward of losing him versus what's the reward of keeping him. And, of course, I think there will be a couple other teams that will step into maybe being interested in Matt Rowell. Again, I'm not too sure who they'll be, but knowing the Western Bulldogs and how they have 896 midfielders and they continue to try and get other midfielders to the team, I wouldn't be surprised if they were another Melbourne team that, of course, tried to get him. Again, before we do get into more teams I think will try and target him, but also who I think Matt Rowell should go to and some more information and whatnot, I'd just like to say there's a decent amount of you guys who watch these videos who are not yet subscribed to the channel. So if you could do me a massive favor and leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel for all latest AFL content and news. And yeah, I think this Matt Rowell situation is really interesting. And I have said this publicly on the channel before, but I do believe the Gold Coast Suns might actually want Matt Rowell to leave. Now, you might be sitting there thinking, what the hell is this fat kid talking about? Why would the Gold Coast Suns want one of their better players to leave the team? Again, there are a lot of reasons, and I think one of the big reasons we'll start off by saying is Damien Hardwick. As we know with his game plan in the AFL, he hasn't typically had many inside contested midfielders throughout his teams, especially throughout his success. Again, at Richmond, you really had Cochin and Prestia, who were the main two, right? And of course, Dusty could go in there and do that, but Dusty could absolutely do literally everything under the sun. Again, in Damien Hardwick's midfields, he's really had a lot of different players go in there. Again, you got so many players who can really move throughout the ground, like a Kane Lambert and Shane Edwards, who weren't really contested plays. Like, they could win a clearance, but they were known for their ball use, their two-way running, their ability to go down forward, their ability to, of course, play on the wing. Even Shane Edwards' ability to literally be a half-back if you wanted him to, right? Again, Damien Hardwick had a lot of players like that go throughout his time, at Richmond. But when we look at Gold Coast right now, in my opinion, I think the Gold Coast midfield is way too one-dimensional, and there are way too many inside contested clearance midfielders in there, and not enough elite ball users, not enough elite two-way runners, and just kind of a different variety of midfielders. Again, I think Anderson and Rowell, they play really, really similar. You've also got Tuke Miller in there, who, again, he's a very good ball user, but also plays very similar to those guys as well. Again, the Gold Coast Suns definitely have a couple of those other guys littered throughout their team that some of them aren't getting played under Dimmer, or they're being played in different positions. But one thing tells me that Dimmer and the Gold Coast Suns might actually see Rowell requesting a trade as a good thing, getting back another first-round pick, not overpaying for a guy, and just going and, of course, selecting Zeke Uland in that top 3. A really good inside midfielder who I think is going to be very different to, of course, the type of player that Matt Rowell is, as well as Jake Rogers eventually getting more time in that midfield, etc., etc. But what I'm just saying then is not saying that Matt Rowell is a bad player. In fact, I think Matt Rowell is a very good player. It's just the Gold Coast Suns have guys on their team who play very similar, who are probably equal to his level, or in Anderson's case, probably a better footballer. But then you look at teams like Collingwood, Geelong, and Essendon. They desperately need an inside clearance contested player, especially Collingwood, who have really relied on De Goey and Tom Mitchell to do that over the last couple of years. Of course, Mitchell was injured throughout most of last year. De Goey, again, had a lot of injury problems as well. And then you've got Dacos in there who, in my opinion, works better as a player who's not going in there and getting the contested ball or clearance. He works better as a player who gets it off that guy and, of course, uses his prolific ball skills, his kicking, to, of course, set up a player. Very similar to the role that I think that Ollie Wines has done for Zach Butters and Connor Rosie over the last couple of years, and even similar to the role that Dion Prestia and Trent Cotchin have done for Dusty, Kane Lambert, and, of course, Shane Edwards. Every team needs a guy or two in there that can feed them the ball, feed the elite disposal users the ball. And Nick Dacos is not only having to be the elite disposal user, but is having to be the contested and clearance guy. And eventually it's going to take a very big beating on his body, especially with such a skinny frame. You need a guy like Matt Rowell in there, and I think that's who they're really, really going to go for. Geelong as well need that player. Essendon have Zach Merritt and even Parrish in there, but they're probably going to be looking for Matt Rowell as well. And I don't think Richmond should go for him ultimately. I think Richmond have a lot of those players as well. They've got Jacob Hopper and Tim Taranto in there, and now Josh Smiley, who are those big inside contested clearance winning midfielders. They don't need another one, and I don't think they're going to go for Rowell. They are interested in him, but I think that's them doing their homework. I think there's a reason they haven't interviewed with him. I don't necessarily think Rowell would be that good of a fit at Richmond right now. Again, my opinion can be swayed on that, and, it definitely could be. But I think there are other better options. I'd say Collingwood would be the best option for Rowell in terms of his ability and how he plays. They need a guy like that. Another team would actually be St Kilda. Again, they brought in Jack McRae to do that role, but I think Jack McRae is a short-term guy who might just be another year or two of playing good footy. Again, they've got Steele in there as well, but he probably has 4 or 5 years left in the AFL. You're going to need a guy for your future who can go the 7 to 8 and even more, hopefully, which, look, Rowell, he could very well do, and it'll be interesting to see. They need a very good contested inside clearance player. So it'll be very interesting to see who goes for Matt Rowell, who signs him. Should Gold Coast let him go? What would they get back if they, of course, did let him go? Again, I'd very much like to hear all of your thoughts and opinions on this down below. Do you guys think the Gold Coast Suns should move on from Matt Rowell? Should another team try and get him? Again, I'd very much like to know. Subscribe to my gaming channels and my IRL/flowing channels. which will be linked down below. And even subscribe to this channel if you haven't already for all the latest sports content and news. And I guess I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.